This is an excerpt from the chapter Body in the book, This Here Flesh, Spirituality, Liberation, and the Stories That Make Us, written by Cole Arthur Riley. We are remarkably material beings. When we speak of bearing the image of God, I believe no small part of that is a physical being. You may have heard it said, you don't have a soul. You are a soul. You have a body. I'm not sure exactly where this notion came from, but the sentiment survives. Many of us, in pursuit of the spiritual, become woefully neglectful of the physical. We concern ourselves with a doctrine of salvation that is oriented around one underlying hope: heaven. And our concertos of heaven are often disembodied, a spiritual goal to transcend the material world eternally. You've seen the bumper sticker slapped crooked on a dusty sedan. It reads, "This place is not my home." This was the eerie heartbeat of this small log cabin church. Your body is expendable. And it's not only them. I think whiteness knows that the more detached I am from my body, the easier that body will be to colonize and use towards whiteness's own ends. It desires that my mind be fixed firmly on an immaterial realm, that I become numb to my present and material injustices. It is this belief system that indoctrinates us to sneer at social justice but bow to evangelism. After all, evangelism has the ability to exercise the same form of ownership in the name of heaven, telling us what to think and be. It can be a form of ownership in the name of heaven. All our charades of honoring the invisible beings at the expense of the material serve to obscure the very material injustices by which Black people have been historically excluded. This is not to say I believe in an unseen spiritual realm. On the contrary, I believe that the spiritual realm is so enmeshed with the physical that it is imperceptible. I believe in the material nearness of my ancestors, but I believe they are located in the sight of my blood and bone. The chasm between the spiritual and the physical is no greater than that between a thought and a word. They cannot be disconnected, and it is difficult to tell where one side ends and the other begins, perhaps because there is no such place. We were never meant to dismember our selfhoods. My face is my soul, is my blood, is my glory. When we neglect the physical, it inevitably suffocates the image of God who ate, slept, cried, bled, grew, and healed. And whether or not the origin of that neglect is hatred, it will indeed end in hatred. I want a faith that loves the whole of me. And if I make it to the table of God, I hope it has cornbread stuffing and comfortable chairs.
Beautifully done reading, Allison. These are words from a contemporary Black liberation and contemplative theologian, Cole Arthur Riley, from the book, This Here Flesh. Yet I start our service with another quote from a different book, Beloved by Toni Morrison, which is the center focus of This Here Flesh. These words, after a service and a sermon in the middle of the woods where baby Suggs asked people to laugh and cry and hug and celebrate till they were so tired they fell down on the grass. And baby Suggs says, "Here, in this here place, we flesh. Flesh that weeps, laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet in grass. Love it. Love it hard." Growing up, I didn't really learn how to love my body. There are lots of reasons for this. For anyone living in Western culture, there are lots of expectations about our body, how they should look, how they should function, how they should feel. There are so many scripts given to us by society, especially people who happen to be living in feminine presenting bodies. The world is not built to appreciate and celebrate the various levels of abilities that different bodies have, or the very human conditions of our bodies. And more than that, Western theologies and histories teach us certain things about our bodies. Even our Unitarian Universalist heritage with its Puritan roots and transcendentalist spirituality have focused on the spirit and the mind rather than the body, as if the two could be separate. Yet in order for us to live in a world of justice and liberation for all, we must center ourselves in our bodies. The truth is that all spirituality, all faith, all justice comes back to the body. Unitarian Universalists have a history of separating the head and the heart, the body and the soul. And yet as a tradition, we're not alone. We are two different traditions in the United States reacting and responding to the Puritan worth ethic and this constant pressure that our bodies are sinful and we never know when we might go into the drawers of the fires of hell, as they did back in the Puritan days. Well, our Universalists claimed, no, we are beloved people of God, and rejected this Puritan ethic of the inherent sinful nature of humanity. Universalists even claimed that pleasure itself was an impetus for morality and something that was holy. Unitarians went straight from focusing on the body to our moral character as a reaction to Puritans. They said, look at our intellect and our reason. Look at our ability to be good people. This started a tradition of getting away from the body into the mind or the spirit. But we're not alone in this. Faith and traditions across history have focused in many different ways, whether on mystical or spiritual experiences that are outside of the body. Whether we're talking about Buddhist nirvana, Islamic mysticism, or transcendentalist meditation, where the purpose is to transcend the individual to the spirit of the whole, there are countless practices that are often misinterpreted to transcend or spiritually remove from the body. I want to take a moment to actually shout out and be grateful for my colleague, Reverend Will Feinberg, who at our UU retreat that I just went to this weekend, going through Buddhist meditation and teaching from Thich Nhat Hanh, that actually Buddhist meditation rests in the body. That when you stop in meditation, you have to look at the whole body and wonder, where else in your body are you running? What else is going on? That is actually the point and purpose of meditation. I was never taught that. I always thought it was an escape from the body, that I had to ignore my thoughts or ignore my feelings or ignore sensations. I learn new things every day. But this confusion doesn't just happen in spiritual or mystic traditions. It also happens intellectually in every philosophy that we can name, and even in our own histories of humanism. Humanism tends to look at the intellect, at the mind, at reason, or at moral character, not necessarily at the physical or at the pleasurable or at the everyday. And yet all of these traditions, all of these faithful movements, everything we experience happens through our bodies. We cannot separate the mind and the body, or the soul and the spirit from the body, because literally everything we experience comes through it. Human beings are embodied people. We're breathing, living, eating, sleeping, loving in our bodies. All faith practices come back to the body. and therefore all the messages we receive about our bodies affect our beliefs about ourselves and our spirituality. As Allison read from Cole Arthur Riley, she says, "We were never meant to dismember our selfhoods. My face is my soul, is my blood, is my glory. And whether or not the origin of the neglect between the physical is hatred, it will indeed end in hatred." End quote. I think what's meant by this is that though we live in our bodies through everything we do, we live in a world that's pretty apathetic to it. And that whether intended or not, ends up being pretty hateful to physical embodied reality. Corporations overwork and underpay people, treating human labor as a commodity and an infinite resource that can continue to be exploited. And when you're tired, they can just hire somebody else. Whether it's 60-plus hour work weeks or grueling factory labor, none of our economic systems were built or made for our bodies in mind. Our societal pressures and ideals of beauty and body image, regardless of gender, do not account for the ways that we naturally wrinkle or age or lose or gain weight or change over time. Everything from restaurants to buildings to mass transit does not account for the access of many different abilities or many different varieties of human bodies. Laws are constantly written about how we do or do not use certain parts of our bodies. Those of us with uteruses kind of know that. Medical institutions are taught to assume that certain bodies can handle more pain than others, maybe not intentionally, but through systems of racism or ableism. And other bodies are assumed to be unhealthy just because of their size. Right now, across our country, transgender bodies are being policed and controlled by laws, medical systems, schools, and more. Those who live on the margins of identities know more than most. Bodies are often sought to be controlled or policed, not loved. It's important in this Black History Month to name the context of the readings that I've shared, the context of Cole Arthur Riley as a contemporary contemplative theologian, but one who's grounded as a Black woman in Black liberation. She's the author not only of this book, This Here Flesh, but also of Black liturgies and Psalms for Black Lives, made popular over Instagram. She grounds her book in the vision of Toni Morrison and Baby Shugs, in a spirituality that is inherently and specifically Black. Because Baby Shugs preaches to her community, love your flesh, love it hard, for they do not love it. Those words mean something in the context of Black authors and Black voices. Whiteness and white supremacy doesn't love Black skin, and we live in embodied systems of racism and oppression with all kinds of ties to Black lived experiences that literally affect bodies, right? From the highest rates of Black maternal death in the Western world here in the US, to dangers and environmental poisons of waters like those in Flint, Michigan. Systems of oppression and marginalization affect literal bodies. And it's for this reason that Black bodies tend to be on the forefront of activism and political change for bodily autonomy and more. The very movement for reproductive justice, specifically reproductive justice, is a term and a movement started by Black activists and Black women who were in conversations for laws around healthcare or reproductive rights and witnessed some of their concerns just were being overlooked or missed, including going beyond the traditional Roe v. Wade to cover the whole spectrum of birth control, of maternal care, or of access to health care. So many movements of Black liberation, reproductive justice, environmental justice live out of the activism of marginalized identities, of trans people, of indigenous people, of Black people who literally experience in their bodies, they do not love our flesh. Our Unitarian Universalism centers our faith in love that claims the inherent worth of each and every body. Whether we continue to rest on our beliefs about the importance of individuals' direct spiritual experience, or if we rest on our principles of the inherent worth, our faith calls us to work on a world that honors the dignity, the holiness, the freedom of all human bodies. All of us, no matter our identities or privileges, can learn from the witness of Cole Arthur Riley and Toni Morrison, the witness of bodies who are often marginalized, to learn that loving our bodies is an act of resilience and resistance. This may be why our UUA Side of Love community has chosen this week, along with the other weeks that are happening with Side of Love, to focus on bodily autonomy. Side of Love offered in an email that they sent out to several congregations their vision of what a world that honors bodies would look like. This is an excerpt from co-written by ministers Reverend Amanda Schuber, a disability justice advocate, Reverend Jamie Yandel, a trans support specialist, and Reverend Renwa Hamami, a congregational organizer. They say, quote, "Imagine a world where every body was treated as truly sacred. Every body, whatever shape, size, expression, or ability, was revered as one of the infinite expressions of the divine, a reflection of God, an opportunity to celebrate the holy diversity that makes up our humanity." End quote. This is a vision of a world we yearn for, and yet a world that could be possible. And in order for this world to be possible, we need to do two things. First, we fight for the dignity and holy worth of each and every person's body. Every body has the right to choose what happens to that body. Every body has the right to proper medical care and to be truly listened to regarding health. Every body deserves to be comfortable, deserves to take up as much space as a body requires to take up space. A body deserves to be treated with kindness and care. A body has the right to wear whatever clothes, whatever expressions feel most comfortable. A body has the right to choose the bathrooms and the sports teams and the structures that feel fresh for that body. And every body has the right to clean water, to fresh food, to shelter from the elements, to clean air, to live free from fear and threats of violence. Everybody. Every different able, differently gendered, different loving, different race, different size, different style, different aged body. At the voting box, in our streets, in our conversations with others or ourselves, at our doctor's offices, let us advocate for bodies everywhere. Let us rest in our Universalist roots for the love that centers all of us. And the other thing we need to do is to truly love our bodies. This is hard. It's hard for me. It can't just be done with a flicking of a switch. We live in a world of systems that teach us to reject, to police, to pressure, to shame certain parts of our bodies. It's going to take a lot of unlearning. For those of us like me who have some privileges, it'll take a lot of unlearning for the ways that my body is treated differently than others' bodies. It will take unlearning our own sources of shame, our own fears. Unlearning the fat phobia that's so pervasive in every sector of our society that sees anything beyond a size 8 as unnormal, which is just not real or realistic. It takes listening to the discomfort in our bodies, taking a moment to breathe. In communities like this, where we may not agree, where we may need to sit with the breath and discomfort and learn to love ourselves and each other. It takes listening to our bodies, being honest about how we feel and listening and breathing into it. showing up, sometimes being vulnerable. It means learning to embrace the true limitations of being our bodies, of growing older, of maybe not having the same range of motion or eyesight or size as we used to. Loving our bodies is scary. It takes a self-intimacy that is hard. But loving your full self, the only home your spirit has ever known, is worth it. Loving your flesh, the rolls of your stomach, the wrinkles of your eyes, the texture of your hands, it is worth it to know this one vessel of this wild and precious life. It is worth it to reclaim the beauty of our bodies, because the only ways we live in this earth is in them. The only ways we all get free together is to understand that every body deserves that freedom and to love ourselves. Love your flesh. Love it hard.